Alright, so I'm right in the middle of doing a comparison video because I want to see how some bigger shocks and struts, the complete assembly, as well as just changing out the shock portion, compare to these heavy duty KYBs that I had on there in the past, because I want to go back and see if that mag ride works better than what I put on there for a long time just for a quick fix. So I got about 200,000 miles on this thing, and these probably got about 50,000 on them, so about time to change them out. So I got me a set of these shocks. So if you want to see how to change these out, like I say, you'll see a comparison video out on the channel. You'll be able to find it out there if you want to see how these bigger ones do. This is the full assembly. You can also buy just the shock portion. And in this video at the end, I'll show how to take the spring off. If you just want to go the lower cost option and get the shock, it's going to be a lot more work. But if you get the full assembly, it's super simple to change out, because really there's only 5 bolts, and if you have the mag ride, there's the little sensor right in the middle. So we can take this off probably 15 minutes, change this whole assembly out. If you buy just the inside, you got to take all this off and put it on it. It's going to be a lot more work, but we'll show that at the end of this video in case you want to go that route, or we'll show how simple it is just to change these things out. So let's get set up here and we will get this guy swapped out, and then I can finish up my final video for my comparison to see how the whole bigger assembly here does compared to these. Alright, so if we're just looking at taking the whole assembly out and swapping it, there's only 5 bolts, like I say, that hold it on. You can see 2 of them on the bottom perch, and then there's 3, this thing's kind of heavy, there's 3 up top, right up here. Those come out up on the top perch, and then the sensor in the middle. And you can do most everything from the side right here. So I can access those 3 right here. I can also access that little connector. The connector is not hard to get off. Here's a sample, and like I say, I was running these old ones and they don't have the adapter on top for the mag ride. And so there is another video out on the channel if you want to go the really super cheap route. You can make a little resistor. I'll show how to do that on the channel. Plug it into the connector that goes from the car, and you can trick the car so it doesn't throw any coats. But up on top there is this little connector, and all you do, you have to pinch it and it'll pop right off there. Then you can just swap this out. So we'll get set up, zoomed in here, and we'll see how to take this off real quick. Like I say, I can do it from the side. I'll probably go up top and take those 3 out because it's a little bit quicker, but you can do it from the side. They sit right here. Once you get your wheel off, you can see everything. Alright, so to get this off here, it's pretty simple. There's only 2 bolts in the bottom right down here, and you can see them on your assembly, but they're 15 millimeter. So we're going to start and just pop those out of there. And so we just need to come up on the bottom, and you don't have to worry about this whole assembly coming down, because right over here on the upper arm, there's a little bump stop. It's made out of metal. I think my bumper's missing. But there's a little bump stop right there, and it'll prevent it from falling down any further. Probably not going to fall down anyway because the sway bar is going to be holding it up. And we'll show how to get the part out of there real easy by dropping that sway bar link down just a little bit. Makes life so much simpler than trying to fight to get that strut over the top of the perch. So all we do, we just need to take these bottom 2 off. Right there. There you go, and you can see nothing really moved. It's still stuck in there. Now we want to get the top ones off, so we'll swing up top. I'll show where they are, and then I'll take them off real quick. There's just 3 of them up there, plus that little electrical connector. Alright, so if we're looking down in our engine bay, on the driver's side, they're really easy to access. You can see here where the flashlight is shining. There's 1 bolt right here that of the 3, and it's got a little electrical thing on it that has to get taken off there, so you can see that bolt. Then there's 1 back here, hiding back around here, and 1 over here. So what I'll do is set the camera down. We'll take those 3 loose, and then right in the middle, if I can get the camera on it, you'll see here is the electrical connector. So all you got to do is squeeze it, and you can pop it right off there. So there's the little connector. We'll lay it to the side. We just got to get the 3 bolts out, or nuts off, and then we'll be ready to go to pull this thing out. And there we go. So the 3 nuts out on top. You see them right here. There's 1, 2, 3. Now there's really nothing holding it in there, so let's switch back down to the bottom. Like I say, it hadn't come out yet, so it's still pinched in there, but we're going to take care of that in just a second. Alright, so with everything disconnected, you could, if you wanted to, you could just take a big old pry tool and you could jump it off of the perch down here on the bottom, but it's really hard to get the other one back up on there because everything's still too tight. So what's holding everything up is actually the sway bar. So if you want to save yourself a little bit of trouble, you don't have to take it all the way off, you just got to loosen it up a little bit. So what we're going to do is grab our 15mm again, and we're gonna make sure we're reversed. And what we want to do is just loosen up this sway bar right here. You don't have to take it all the way off, you just got to loosen it up. And what that allows is this whole thing to go downward when I push on it, and then this whole strut is going to be free. So now all I got to do is give it a little push, and I can push it down, and so then I can easily take that whole strut assembly and walk it out of there. So as simple as that, you can take the strut out just by pushing down on it. Now all we got to do is slap our new one back in there, and away we'll go. Alright, so to put our new strut assembly in, we just got to get the nuts. And we're going to take this guy, and in the same way, I'm going to put a nut on it to hold it up in place. So you just want to set it back down in the hole. Be careful of your fingers, because this thing's just a little bit heavy. And tip it up in. And then you want to line up your little holes. Once you get everything out of the way, so it won't go on the bottom perch yet, but we can put a nut up in there to hold it on there. We'll just put one in the front right there. So now it's held in place. And what I can do, since I got this loose, I'll just push down on it, set it up on the perch, then tighten this back up, tighten our bolts up, and we'll be in good shape. So now all we got to do is raise it up and set it on the perch. So you can see I can move it a lot without that sway bar holding it in place. So if it comes with bolts, you'd use your new bolts. This one didn't come with them, so I'll just reuse my old bolts. And we just need to put our bottom ones in there. Alright, so we got the bottom one in. Now let's put our other two nuts on there up top. There we go. Now we just need to tighten those guys up and tighten the bottom up. So now that I got it mounted back in there, I'm going to go ahead and tighten the sway bar back up. And there we go. With the sway bar tightened back up and these guys sitting up in the top, I can go ahead and tighten the bottom perch, and then we'll do the upper nuts last. Or we can go ahead and do them, do our electrical connector, and then tighten up the bottom. So I'll go ahead and do them first and get them done and out of the way. Alright, so with the top three down there, then all we want to do is just make sure that they're fully seated. So we just want to take a wrench and make sure they're nice and tight. Everything's good. So the last thing on the list, I'll take the glove off, is to get our little connector and take the little rubber protective cap off right there. And then we just want to snap our little connector back on. And there we go. So that's everything up top. The only thing we got to do on the bottom is tighten up the bottom bolts. And we just want to check and make sure everything's nice and tight. So we'll put a wrench on those and give them a thump too. And there we go. It's about as simple as that. All we have is 2 on the bottom, 3 up top, an electrical connector, and then to make life easy, just loosen up your sway bar, and you got it made. So now we can just switch over to the other side, get the other one swapped out, and then we'll be ready for our third and final comparison of this full assembly from Vigor versus just the shock portion from Vigor with my OE springs, and compare that to the original heavy duty KYBs that I had put on there in place of the mag ride. So up next, I'll show a video of if you're wanting to just buy this portion, the center portion of it. If you're wanting to just buy that and you want to take all this off, I'll put a video clip right after this in this video, and you can see how to take all that off. But believe you me, it's a lot simpler just to go ahead and buy the complete assembly and not have to deal with all of this. So there we go. Easy change out. We just got to put a wheel on and do the other side, and we'll be good to go. Alright, so to swap the spring and the mount and all of that over onto a new shock portion of the strut, what we got to do is get this big old spring off here. So unless you got a death wish or you're wanting to have a big accident in the garage out here, you need to get you a set of these McPherson strut pullers right here. And they're about 30 bucks, I think, something like that. But these are super critical because if you just go to taking that bolt off, there's so much tension on that spring right now, this thing's going to fly across the room. You're not going to be able to get it back together, and you're probably going to be going in the house and going through a bathroom break. So all you got to do is just get a set of these, and these are nice because they got pins on them. So what I'm going to do is clip that onto the spring. Now you can get as high as you can get. Sometimes you can get all the way up here, and it just makes it that much easier. So I can expand this a little bit, but I'm going to put 2 of these on there, and we're going to squeeze this spring down, get it to where these guys are holding the tension for us. Then we're going to be able to take it off safely. So let's get this guy on there. We've got to be able to get our socket on there, so we'll just preload this one and then see if we can get our pins in. If you can't get the pins in, not the end of the world, because he's got a pretty good grip on them. If you can get the pin in, it's even that much better. But before I go taking things apart, there's an orientation. As you can see, I got little marks on this thing. And what you got to do is make sure that when it's laying down, the angle of the bottom mount right here matches up to the angle. Because if it's flipped over this way, you can see that this one's leaning this way, this one's leaning that way. So you got to make sure that you put it on there the right way, because you want to have these bolt up right in the car, and you want to have this one bolt up front, and there's a little plate right here on the back that goes to the back. So you got to make sure you put it together right, or you're going to be taking it back apart and doing it again. So let's get this other one on here. Like I said, I'd like to get the pins on, but can't get the pins on this one because this assembly is so big. We'll get him spun out so we can get a good grip on the spring. So now we got a hold of the spring. What we want to do is just tighten down until we feel things loosening up on here. Then we can take that bolt loose, and we'll know that we're safe because we got everything under control. So I'll just crank them down by hand for a second, and then I'm going to run them down with a ratchet, or we'll use the impact driver. There we go. So now we're starting to get a little wiggle on it, so we can start backing this bolt out, and we're keeping our orientation the same. So you can see the way I got it set up, it's leaning this way, so I got to make sure my guy is leaning that way. So now let's start easing this nut back and see if it all frees up. So now we're starting to loosen up. So we got a little bit of thread left. You got to be careful. Don't go off this thread until you know for sure this thing is loosened up. Alright, so after you back that off there, you can see that the holder is holding the spring, so all of that loosened up and it didn't go flying. So now we just have to wiggle everything loose. We can take the whole thing off and put it on the new one. So we just got to slide this out of there, and then we'll be in good shape. So I'm going to go get a dead blow hammer, and I'm going to knock that out of there. There's that part. So now we got to keep up with our orientation. So you can see I put a little green mark. This is what goes up right there. We'll set it like that because we got everything lined up the same on our strut. need to get a screwdriver or something. And we can pry on the end of it and get it to come off that seat right there. And there we go. So there's our old shock. So now all we need to do is just transfer everything over to the new one in the same orientation. So we grab our new one and we slip him up in there like that. Then we grab this and we're going to put it back on there the same orientation. Alright, so keeping everything lined up right, we got to have this about right there lined up to here so it'll fit back in the vehicle, because once we put it together, none of this is going to move very easy, so it's going to be really hard to line things up. So you want to line this one up to here, and then we got to tip it all up and get our new bolt started. Right here, so we put him on there and we should be able to just catch the thread since the McPherson strut supports are holding it. So now we just got to torque everything back down, and you can see it's a whole lot easier just to buy this whole assembly, but it's a little less expensive if you just buy the shock and rebuild your own strut. So let's get this guy torqued down here. So just a note, it's really hard to tell how long to keep driving it down, but you got to watch your impact driver socket, and when it stops moving so quickly and it starts hitting home, you'll know you're done. That's all you got to do. But you do have to keep going until it stops spinning around real freely. So I have to keep watching that driver. So there we go. We got our nut back on. We got everything lined up more or less in position, because see now it's not going to want to move because it's tightened up. We'd have to get a bar on that thing to get it to move right for us. And there we go. So we got our rebuilt strut, so we can throw it back on the car. But as you can see, it's a whole lot of work to do that right there, when for just a little bit more money you can buy that whole assembly already put together without all of that work. Then you don't have to deal with all of that. Alright, so let's get this one put back on, and then we'll do the other side. Then we'll be ready to do some comparison testing. Alright, so just a side note, when I was doing the other one, it's not wanting to spin off at all. So since we're changing the shock portion out, if they just spin and spin and spin and they won't come out, you can push this rubber boot back and grab a hold of the shaft with a pair of vice grips, and then we'll see if we can get it out of there. So I already got it tightened up with the strut holders. So now, let's see if we can get it backed out of there. And there we go. So if it is not wanting to come off and it's just spinning around and around, just get you a pair of vice grips, since we're going to toss this anyway. It's going to put some marks on it and actually ruin the shock. But we don't care, we're going to swap them out anyway. We just had to get that rubber piece up. So then, we got it loose, and we can go about taking the whole assembly apart, putting it over on the other one, and we'll be done with side 2. Well, alright, as soon as we get her done, we'll go for our test ride and see how this setup does.